Walking through the woods always feels a little wild. You never know what or whom you might run into, but this isn't any ordinary walk in the park. I'm at Olana, and this entire landscape and that big house at the top of the hill were intentionally placed here by 19th century landscape painter Frederick Church. He didn't just create 2D canvases. He built a living masterpiece. Olana is where art meets nature, meets Orientalist fantasy. And the roots of Church's craft may have been in Victorian ideas about the religious glory of the wilderness, but contemporary critics usually call his work scientific. No doubt about it, Olana is a little bit of everything. Church was born in Hartford, Connecticut in 1826. Earlier generations of the Churches helped found the town, and his father was a silversmith. The family also did business in mills, insurance, railroads, and real estate. Frederick showed natural artistic talent while he was still young and was sent to study art with Thomas Cole, a well-established Hudson Valley landscape painter in 1844. Church sketched, painted, and learned about the finer points of composition and artistic symbolism. Ready to strike out on his own, Church opened a studio in New York City in 1847 and quickly gained a reputation for his vivid work. Every spring and fall, he'd travel to sketch, sometimes on foot, and in the winter, he'd return to the city to paint and sell those paintings. Soon, he was ready to travel south, as in South America south. Around this time, Church became a fan of Alexander von Humboldt, a German explorer, geographer, and naturalist. Von Humboldt wrote directly to artists and asked them to illustrate the utility in diversity in the natural world. In other words, how all of the little parts make up the big whole, particularly in South America. Church heeded the call and traveled in and around Colombia in 1853. In 1857, he spent time in Ecuador. The South American paintings created from his von Humboldt-inspired sketches were some of his most successful. The work that made him a true art world star was 1859's The Heart of the Andes, a 5-foot by 10-foot cornucopia of overwhelming natural detail. Simultaneous with Church's Heart of the Andes success was his marriage to Isabel Carnes from Ohio, and in 1860, Church bought 126 acres of farmland in Hudson, a sketching spot he had visited as a young apprentice with Thomas Cole. By this point, Cole had passed away, but his family still lived across the river, and the young couple boarded with them while their small house, Cozy Cottage, was built. I'm sure eager homeowners can relate. Church was raring to go on his new land. He planted thousands of trees, and he managed to turn a swamp into a lake.
So he really embarks over the course of the next 40 years to take a land that has largely been stripped of trees and plant tens of thousands of trees. He says, in my first 10 years here, all I thought about was planting trees, and I planted tens of thousands of them, and they were all native species. So that was very important. He didn't want a rich person's exotic garden. He wanted to reforest this land and bring it back to a vision of the American wilderness. And that was extension of his painting practice, the extension of his vision as an artist into the landscape.
Tragically, the couple lost their first 2 children, Herbert and Emma, within weeks of each other in 1865. Sunrise and moonrise, painted to commemorate the births of their children, both now hang in the sitting room. Grief-stricken, Frederick and Isabel left the country and spent several months in Jamaica. In 1886, their son, Frederick Joseph, was born, but they still had the travel bug. The whole family, including Isabel's mother, went on an 18-month trek across the Middle East. They visited Rome, Beirut, and Jerusalem. Church traveled on his own to Petra in Jordan, which he painted as a gift for his wife. It hangs above the fireplace in the sitting room. Church also fulfilled another long-awaited dream. He bought 18 more acres of land at the top of the hill. This meant a mountaintop view of the entire Hudson River Valley. Church planned a new house for the site, and the couple soon had 3 more children, Theodore, Louis, and Isabel Charlotte. The children were all educated at home, and later went to boarding schools. And the family library had a vast collection of course, geology, geography, and cartology books. Church was very involved in the construction and building process, and even drafted up his own architectural sketches. His and his wife's travels across the Middle East inspired the design, but none of it is very authentic. Victorian Orientalist design borrowed elements from various cultures: Egyptian, Persian, Greek, Arabic, and kind of smashed it all together into a broadly Western or Occidental interpretation of what the East or Orient was like. And Church knew this was what the artistic movement was all about. He called the main house Persian, adapted to the Occident. Olana is a vision anywhere you look. Specific carriage roads were plotted through the landscape to showcase exactly the views Church wanted.
One of my favorite, I think, that really telling quotes about Church and how he thought about his work in creating Olana over 40 years. In 1884, he wrote to his good friend Erastus Palmer, who's a sculptor up in Albany, and I'll paraphrase, but "My dear Erastus, this season I have completed 1.25 miles of carriage road, and at this time in my life I am making better pictures this way than by dabbling in paint and canvas in the studio." So it's an expression that he's really enjoying himself, that he's making pictures in the landscape, and this is an artistic expression. And it's another sort of capturing that time of life that, you know, things are changing and evolving for him, and great artists constantly evolve.
And the house? It's probably unlike any house his guests would have ever seen. One of the most beautiful decorative flourishes is the stenciling, inside and out. Church recreated stencil copies of patterns he found in books about Arabic architecture and placed them all over the facade. Written above this north-facing door is Marhaba, meaning welcome in Arabic. Several windows throughout the main house feature cut pieces of paper placed between two panes of yellow glass. Church thought there was no good view from the north, but he still wanted natural golden light to filter into the home. Olana's main house is a villa, which means there's a central court in the middle. Persian-inspired, the ground floor sweeps you from connecting room to connecting room, drawing you in through oversized doors from one scene to another. Collectibles and souvenirs the family picked up on their international travels helped tie together the overall effect into one dramatic yet uniquely detailed place. Every single window, some have amber glass borders mimicking a picture frame, invites you to look outside. And the views? Well, the views speak for themselves. So, where does the name Olana come from? Well, for Christmas in 1879, Isabel gave Frederick an ancient geographic reference book. That book claimed a fortress called Olane served as an ancient Persian treasure house that overlooked Mount Ararat. During Church's later years, he became even more deeply involved with art and parklands. He became a commissioner of the Department of Public Parks in New York City, but he also developed rheumatoid arthritis during this time period, which more or less put a stop to his painting career. By the time of his death in 1900, the art world had moved on from Victorian-era landscape artists. But his son Louis, and later Louis's wife Sally, continued to live at Olana until 1964. They were very careful stewards of the property, woodlands, and Church's artistic legacy. And the wait paid off, as it usually does, eventually. In the mid-1960s, towns all across the United States were eager to save their historic sites and residences, and the preservationist movement quickly set its sights on Olana. Thanks to Frederick's artistic vision and his son and daughter-in-law's diligent upkeep, this has long been considered one of the best preserved sites in New York State, and you can see why. The preservationist movement's goal of protecting historic places and landscapes have ensured that Olana will continue to be a destination to future generations of art and nature lovers.
You know, we're really proud that Olana is a state park. It is open, free of charge, 365 days a year. The only thing that you do that you pay for when you come to Olana is your choice to take a tour or another kind of programmatic experience with our staff.
Are you ready to tackle your long-term building project? Head over to rocketmortgage.com to finance your picture-perfect home.
Are you right? Everyone right?
Wait, that's so funny.
Okay.
Loved it. Loved it.